and welcome back everyone to the video series dedicated show on MTV, where in this episode we got a lot of feet content. I mean, this episode had so much feet, I thought it was directed by Quentin Tarantino. That's right, we're talking about The Challenge Season 40 Battle of the Eras Episode 13. Lucky number 13 or unlucky number 13, depends on how you watched this episode. Now I'll be for real, not a ton happens in this episode because we didn't have a chamber for the first time, but we do have a bit to talk about, so let's start off where last episode left off, and that was with Bananas winning in the elimination and making 3 new targets of Michele, Olivia, and Cara Maria. So coming back to the challenge house, we learn that the Bananas Angels loves to just wiggle their toesy woesies all over each other. And once all their piggies went to market, that's when Bananas, Josh, and Michele all convene in the upstairs kitchen area and have an argument with one another, all while Derek is trying to give Michele a cooking lesson. This argument goes nowhere, and I'm totally on the side of Derek, who's like, hey, the most important thing here is about the food, because with all of this yammering going on where it's like, who can be friends with whom? Who cares? Is the burger gonna get burned? We go from that argument to a group discussion between 4 players that I never saw working together coming into this season, and that is Olivia, Michele, Cara, and Tori. And they talk about how they are not in the Bananas Angels, that it would be boring to be an angel, and then we get more feet content because then they talk about how their feet aren't good enough to be in the Bananas Angels and that Bananas would never give them a foot rub. I mean, we hear about Cara's bunion and Tori's long toe. I mean, what show am I watching? Now, I love this discussion and I love this part of the season because we are finally seeing lines being drawn and we see the factions in the house and where everybody's numbers lie. As we're hearing from Tori, her roster is Jordan is number 1. She's still working with Josh in some capacity and somehow he's still her number 2, even with working so closely with Bananas and his angels. And then Tori has Cory in her top 3. We hear more conversation about other people's rosters, but I think I'll put a pin in that for now, as we'll get more in depth with some of those other conversations. Now, let's have everybody don their challenge gear, head down to meet up with TJ for this week's daily challenge called 40-Yard Dash. We have these trenches that look like a giant 40, and the players are gonna have to run into this moat/maze to then capture 6 puzzle pieces, bring them back one at a time to their puzzle station, put together this ball pyramid puzzle. First man and woman to put their puzzle together will win into power, win into safety, while whichever woman comes last will be going directly into the elimination, and last place man will get a penalty at the next daily challenge. Now, because Michele came in last place last episode in the last daily challenge, she will have a 1-minute time penalty. This daily challenge was interesting. At first, I mean, hearing the rules and seeing the giant trenches, I think it was really interesting idea. I think the execution of it, though, was lacking. Now, they had GoPros in the trenches at certain positions, but from what I remember, everything was mostly filmed from up above. So we didn't get to see a whole lot of action because they couldn't really put cameramen inside the trenches because there was a lot of mud, people were losing shoes, players were running into each other and trying to get in and out of everything. So you couldn't have extra people and extra cameramen in there, so they had GoPros set up. But I just felt like for this kind of challenge, it was just lacking in the way that I don't think what we saw did it justice. But what I thought was interesting was how everybody was working together. We do see Jenny and Rachel working with one another. We see Tori, Olivia, and Cara Maria all working with one another. Jordan and Bananas were lapping everybody. They had 5 of 6 puzzle pieces before a lot of people had even 3 puzzle pieces. The 4 people to collect all 6 of their puzzle pieces first were Jenny, Olivia, Rachel, and Bananas. Jordan was quickly behind them, but as we saw with this puzzle, everybody was having a really tough time on it. To the point where Michele, who had a 1-minute time penalty, when she came back from retrieving all 6 of her puzzle pieces, the majority of the players were still working on their puzzle. The only person to have gotten their puzzle done the quickest out of everybody was Jordan, which I was very surprised that Jordan won this daily challenge, because earlier we had a confessional where Jordan was like, Cara, Michele, and Olivia all seem to be on my good side, even though Michele called out Jordan to be one of the targets last time. But he said winning this daily challenge could put him at a risk for having to expose one of his cards to choose one of them to send into the elimination. Yet, despite all of that reasoning and logic, Jordan pulls out this win. In his mind, Jordan's not thinking that he's gonna come in last place to go directly into next week's Guys' Day. And as long as he doesn't go directly into the elimination, then he has a chance on the Women's Day to not get a penalty and possibly win to not be a target then. We are coming down to the nitty-gritty, and Jordan was like, you know what, if I make a decision or not, I better just win and keep myself safe, which I thought was the right way to go about this. To talk about another competitor that I did not think had a shot of winning this, but did, was Cara Maria. Not to say that I didn't think Cara Maria had it in her, because she has her good days and bad days with puzzles. In her challenge career, it's mostly been bad days. But on this day, she was Cara Clutch Maria. She was able to get this puzzle before any other woman. Before Olivia, who came in second place. Holy heck, Olivia coming in second place, but she also finished her puzzle over Jenny, Rachel, and Tori, who has been on a tear lately. Tori finishes this up in 5th place for the women. For the men, it comes down to Darrell and Cory to see who's gonna get last place to get a penalty for next week's daily challenge, which it ends up being Cory. And then for the women, it comes down to Aviv and Michele. Now, I thought possibly Michele has this thing. This reminds me of like a Survivor puzzle, but this may have been after Michele's time, as she's never done a puzzle like this, and Aviv was able to pull it out. I'm telling you right now, Aviv is so impressive to me for being injured, yet she's going through each and every challenge and giving it 150%, and not coming in last place is really impressive. But here we go. Michele is going directly into the elimination. Cory is getting a penalty. And because Cara Maria won and is safe from going into the elimination, the only other person eligible to go in against Michele is Olivia. Even though she finished this daily challenge in 2nd place, her best finish yet in any solo daily challenge. It's friend in this week's elimination. So that means that there is no need for a chamber. We already have our matchup. There is no decision, so Jordan can just wipe the sweat off his brow. Cara Maria is safe, and everybody can just chill except for Olivia and Michele, and of course Bananas, because no matter who wins, he's gonna be made a target. Now, speaking of Bananas, we do get some bus footage. Bring back the feet, because while on the bus, Aviv is laying down, Bananas is laying down, their feet do touch, and Michele makes a remark about whether her feet can join the party. And I'm sure that there was other remarks and other things alluded to. Michele is poking Bananas and trying to get a reaction from him. There's a big reaction. Olivia makes some comments. Cara Maria jumps in to defend Michele. Bananas is visibly frustrated about what Michele has said. Aviv is very uncomfortable. There's multiple scenes when we come back to the challenge house where Bananas is talking about the comments that Michele made, and even Rachel jumps in with the confessional saying that, hey, we touch each other. We give each other some massages. When rewatching the bus footage, I think initially I was like, wow, they are playing footsies with each other. But when I went back and watched it 2 or 3 times, I think that it was platonic. I feel like they've been doing this foot stuff and foot massages for a long time now, that it's now just this running inside joke, especially with Michele and Olivia and everybody on the other side of the Bananas Angels side of the house. In the meantime, it makes Aviv uncomfortable, but luckily they were able to talk and kind of work things out. But there was a line that was crossed in Aviv's mind, and she just wanted Michele to be aware of it, and there was apologies and everything. So we were able to squash that all together. Now with that all out of the way, we go to the bar scene where Michele is having a conversation with Cory about what if. What if I were to win in the elimination against Olivia? Who would I make a target and who would I save? We hear from Michele. She's eyeing Josh and Bananas to be targets. No shocker there. But now we have 3 guys kind of up for grabs. Kyland, Darrell, and Cory. Now, Michele does say that Kyland is off the books. So she's really going back and forth between Darrell and Cory is trying to sell himself as best as he can. I have you as my number 1. How can I make myself your number one? Derek doesn't have you as his number one, but Michelle's thinking Derek and Olivia have been rocking with each other since day one. I am Derek's number two. If I beat Olivia, then I may rock it up to Derek's number one, but how much can either guy of Cory and Derek help out Michelle's game at this point? She is juggling these guys and her roster, and Cory is a little frustrated, but he's also hopeful. We go to a conversation between Cory and Cara where I had no idea that Cara views Cory as her number one. Now, Cory does tell Cara that Michele is his number one and Cara is number two. But on the off chance that Michele somehow wins the elimination and then makes Cory a target, guess who gets that number one roster spot? That's right. Cara and Cory could be each other's number one, and I couldn't want anything more in this game than for Cara and Cory to be looking out for each other. While also at the bar, we do have a revision on the Bananas Angels that possibly maybe it's not the Bananas Angels, but Rachel's Angels, as Laurel's empty spot could be filled by Josh, which helps Aviv, Jenny, and Rachel way more than it helps Bananas. And Rachel is roping in Josh into the Angels, so maybe this is actually Rachel is the CEO / Rachel's Angels. Just like what Cara said in last week's episode, Bananas is the one helping all the ladies out more than they're helping him out. So I think that is very interesting to posit that maybe this was Rachel's Angels all along. Now we get back to the challenge house, and before going to the arena, we have some conversations, mainly between Michele and Olivia, where Olivia is kind of struggling in this game. She lost Theo, now she's going up against her best friend in the house. How will she make it past this point? You know, she lost some sanity when Theo left, and now having to go up against Michele, and if she loses her friend right after losing her challenge boyfriend, how will Olivia be able to push through in this game? Well, that's going to be a major factor going into this week's elimination, where Michele and Olivia meet TJ down on the arena floor for this week's elimination called Stranded. Each player has a box of pipes that they're going to have to use to create this ladder on this makeshift DNA strand. Once you have all the pipes placed in this ladder, you're going to climb the ladder, grab your puzzle pieces, then you have to use the letters to put together a phrase. Once you get that phrase, you will win, come back into the game, and create 3 new targets. I really like this elimination, one for the creativity, but also I love a good puzzle with some good physicality. And this puzzle was like a puzzle on top of a puzzle while also being physical on top of physical. You had to place the right size pipes at the exact right place on this DNA strand. You had to keep climbing up and down until you got all the poles up. And then you had to climb up one last time to get the letters and then unscramble the piece. I thought that this was impeccable. One of my favorite eliminations of the season thus far. Now, both women had different strategies, which I thought Michelle's strategy was actually going to work out better, where Michele took out all the pipes from the box, laid them out from largest to smallest. That way they were all laid out and that she could just grab the right size when she needed it. Whereas on the other hand, Olivia was just grabbing pipes and then just climbing up. She actually did a really great job. She was able to complete her ladder first and grab her puzzle pieces. Now, this all comes down to the unscrambling of the phrase, where Olivia's strategy then takes a wrong turn because she puts all the letters on the table that you're supposed to solve the phrase on. So now she's trying to place the letters, and there's letters on top of letters. She's knocking them off the table, whereas Michele was able to place all the letters on the floor so that way she could see them all laid out, but they're not all jumbled together on the place that she actually has to solve them on. Michele is a little bit more calm, cool, and collected. Olivia does talk about having dyslexia, and so she was having some troubles with putting the words and the phrases together. And maybe there's a possibility that she wasn't fighting as hard to stay in the game, because what is she coming back to without Theo and Michele back in the house? We did see in the very beginning of the episode, Evelyn and her confessional about whether she wanted to throw the elimination against Kellyanne in the ruins, and that kind of plays a factor in your mind when you're like, did she kind of throw it. Maybe she was pulling up a little bit at the end. Either way, we cannot take this away from Michele. Michele gave it 100%, and no matter whether Olivia was pulling back on purpose or whether she really had no idea and froze at the final phase of this elimination, no matter what it is, Michele was able to pull out this win, get her third elimination win of the season. Michele is coming back into the game, but now she has to make 3 new targets. And she's quick with the draw on Johnny and Josh, but when it comes down to it, she's looking at Derek, she's looking at Cory, and because Olivia is gone, and because Olivia wants to keep Derek safe, and Michele and Derek will now be working with each other on a one-on-one basis, Michele says that Cory is gonna be a target. Cory feels played yet again, but also Cory talked about how it's like, I'm sorry I don't play Scrabble with you, I'm sorry I don't hang out with you a ton in this house, but you should be looking out for me. If I have you as my number 1, why can't you have me as your number 1? It's probably because you don't know each other very well. But that is it for this episode. I thought this episode was fine. I thought it was okay. There was a little bit of drama, no chamber. I feel like the season is kind of slowing down with so few people left in the game. It is fun to see all the different numbers and factions and rosters in the game and who's working with whom. I think this episode in particular was the most revealing of who is working with whom, but everything else of this episode was just kind of all right, in my opinion. I'm still really enjoying this season. I'm going to be very excited to see how the rest of this game is going to go, which numbers are able to overcome the adversities of this season, and how strenuous these daily challenges and eliminations are. There's a good amount of people I'm rooting for. There's some people I wouldn't mind seeing being eliminated relatively sooner rather than later, and I'll get into all of that on this week's Tiny Table Talk live stream over at patreon.com/angelcakevids. But now, I want to turn it over to you. What did you think about this episode? Let me know down in the comment section below. What did you think about all the feet content? Were you into that, or were you not so into that? Let me know down in the comment section below. What do you think about the drama that Michele stirred up on the bus? Do you feel like she had some bad intentions with those comments? Let me know that as well. What do you think about the elimination? What do you think about the daily challenge? Who are you rooting for? Who are you rooting against? Let me know anything and everything down in the comment section below. I now want to give a special shout out thank you to everyone who supports me over at patreon.com/angelcakevids. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching this video up to this point. I'll be back really, really soon with more Challenge 40 content, more challenge content, more content in general. But until then, peace.